Еще раз.
Анатолій. Це ви проводили дослідження, так?
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Oleh, and it's my pleasure to see all of you here in our information platform Brain Hub and Ukraine Media Center Inform. It's day 502 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor, and today we will be talking about an important topic about the attitude of the business to the anti-corruption tax reform. And during our conversation today, we will present the research that was held by Info Sapiens organization regarding the urgency of this anti-corruption tax reform. And I want to introduce our speakers today. It's Anastasiya Shurenkova, research expert at Info Sapiens Research Agency, Marian Zablotskyi, the member of the Parliamentary Committee on Finance, Taxation and Customs Policy, Oleh Havrysh, chief consultant to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, and Anatoliy Amelin, director of economic programs at the Ukrainian Institute for the Future. It's my pleasure to see all of you here. So let's start with the presentation of the study. Ms. Anastasiya, I would like to give the floor to you. So what have you studied? What are the main findings? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. It's my pleasure to present the findings of the study, because we as the researchers are always happy to share the findings of our study. So I'll talk about the attitude of the business to the anti-corruption tax reform, and we will have a couple of blocks that I will stress, that I will give more details about. So first, about the methods of the research. This part seems boring, but eventually during any presentations, when you present any figures, you are asked where have you got them from. Yeah, it's really an important part. So first, I come up with the sources of the figures, and then we'll proceed to the figures itself, and then we'll see the aspects of the tax reform, the way the businesses sees them, the awareness about the 10-10-10 reform, the shadow business, and the ways to overcome it, and we will answer the questions should they arise. So the methods, what was it? It was the question of the business that was going on in telephone mode. It was a random drawdown, and in this case the random nature of the drawdown ensures its representativeness. Now the state registers are being suspended, so we were using the latest data dated January last year. We were responded by the legal entities and individuals. We did not question private entrepreneurs, and those were the businesses registered in Ukraine, and the respondents of the survey were the owners of the businesses. We've questioned 500 respondents, and to make sure that we may analyze the business by its size, you know, there are micro businesses, small businesses, medium-sized, and big businesses that are unproportionally represented in the structure of businesses in Ukraine. So our drawdown was disproportional. We've asked 150 small and micro businesses and 200 medium-sized businesses. That we may analyze each of those clusters. They have difference, but to analyze the total drawdown, those data was reconsidered so that we may survey better the micro businesses, because they account for 82% of the businesses in Ukraine. So let's proceed to the questions. Are you, as a representative of the business, satisfied with the existing tax system? Very simple question. Completely satisfied, rather dissatisfied, rather satisfied. So we see those red segments in the diagram is a fraction of respondents who say that they are rather or completely unsatisfied with the existing tax system. They account for 73%, or almost 2/3. Three quarters. So we questioned the businesses during our surveys. We asked about their reforms that are of priority to them. Very frequently in the first lines of those ratings we see the tax reform. It's been recalled very frequently. So again, we may check the segments of the micro, small and medium-sized business, and we see that micro business is mostly dissatisfied. And again, it's the 82% of the legal entities of Ukraine. They are dissatisfied with the existing tax system. Medium-sized business is a little bit more satisfied, but again, in all the segments of business, the fraction of the respondents who are dissatisfied with the existing tax system is more than a half. As to the aspects of the tax reform, what can they be? We've offered 3 aspects of the tax reform, and we asked them to evaluate to what extent is it necessary, either critically necessary but not critically, or it's not a priority now, or it's completely unnecessary. So again, we've offered such aspects as the tax decrease, going out of shadow, and the facilitation of business administration. But again, other aspects also have the majority of positive answers. Almost 80%, more than 80% of respondents say that all 3 aspects should be implemented, both facilitation and the shadowing of the business and decrease of taxes. And if we inspect it in detail, that the shadowing originate from the facilitation of administration. So again, by all 3 types of businesses, we see that micro businesses are mostly interested in facilitation of business administration. They pay not so much taxes because they're micro businesses. Small and medium-sized business are more interested in tax decrease. We see it clearly by their responses. The specific aspects of the operation of tax systems, such as a turnover tax, it's something that may raise questions, but there is such a situation. There is an opinion that the tax administration, when they expect the businesses, they have some target payments amount. They see the turnover of the company, and they don't in fact consider where the business activity brought any proceeds. They think that given such a turnover, the proceeds should be about, or the income should be at approximately that level, and if the taxes you pay are not compliant with the calculations of the tax administration, the business is about to be inspected. This is something that is of common opinion in the community among the businesses who face the operations of tax administration on a daily basis, and we see that 90% of the respondents, 90% of the business owners, they've at least heard about such system, and 36% of them, more than every third, was facing such situation personally. So it's something based not only on rumors but on personal experience. And another third mentioned that their partners or counterparts were facing such situation, and another third said that they didn't face it personally, but they know they know it from experience of their counterparts. And talking about the distribution by the size of the enterprise, the micro businesses know it more frequently from the experience of their counterparts, and the majority knows about it upon their personal experiences, but the figures are very much alike, so we cannot say that it's only about the micro business. All the segments of business, they equally agree with the opinion that in fact there are some target indicators in the work of tax administration according to which they inspect or they choose to inspect or not inspect the business. And among the respondents, we asked them, do you agree that given such structure of operation of tax administration in Ukraine, in fact, there is a tax on the turnover instead of income tax? It doesn't necessarily mean that you had some income. If you've sold something, some goods in the amount of 1 million hryvnias, you will be inspected as if you've obtained 20% income from that amount. And we see that the majority of our respondents, 48 plus 31, is almost 80. Yes, almost 80%. Thank you. They agree with the statement that yes, in fact, we have the turnover tax. And almost every third said that it goes without saying that we have a turnover tax. And when we see the distribution by the businesses, the majority are like the 90% of the Ukrainian businesses, micro businesses and small businesses, medium-sized businesses are inclined, and medium and large size do not agree with this opinion. But again, I want to say that the majority agrees one way or another that the shadowing of the business we didn't want to scare our respondents. We were thinking how to better ask them. Our question was anonymous. We don't convey the details anywhere, but the question was worded like this: in your opinion, the majority of the businesses working in your sector can pay all the taxes without resorting to optimization. But again, we know it from psychology, when people are being asked about their neighbors, they respond mostly about themselves. And what we see, just like our colleague has said, commenting the results, that in fact it's a bowel of guilt, and they say that no, the majority of the businesses cannot work without optimization. And it sounds like a judgment to me. Again, we see that the medium-sized businesses agree to this to the lesser extent. It requires additional research why the medium-sized businesses, maybe they're better accustomed, or maybe their schemes are developed in a different way. But again, who suffers is the micro and small-sized business. So 83% of micro businesses say that no, they cannot work that way. And part of the respondents that say that yes, obviously the businesses may work paying all the taxes without optimization. It's only 9% in each segment of business, or if we count it all together, those 56% that they say in no case and 33% that say yes to a certain extent, we may understand that the majority of the businesses resort to different optimization schemes. Again, we've asked our respondents, in your opinion, what fraction of the businesses in your sector may resort to the following tax optimization schemes? And we've offered 3 schemes of optimization: optimization of the salary taxes altogether, optimization of joint social payment and payment of salary, optimization of the income tax, and VAT optimization, and it's the same picture everywhere. We cannot say that some tax is very different from others. For example, we optimize the salary taxes and the rest of them we pay fairly. So the optimization of salaries, many businesses say that a lot of them resort to the optimization of this tax, and more than half of the businesses in our sector resort to such schemes. Again, by the segments, micro, small and medium-sized enterprise, we see that they suffer mostly. Most of them, more than a half, say that they resort to optimization. The medium-sized business, to the lesser extent, evaluates the broad nature of those optimization phenomena. So how to deshadow the business? What taxes should be reduced to encourage the business to go out of shadow? We understand that time and intellectual efforts are being paid for that. It's expensive and all. We've offered three main taxes that should be reduced to make sure that the businesses go out of shadow. And 2 out of 3 said that the salary tax should be reduced. 50% say that it's VAT, and 44% say that the income tax should be reduced. So 1 in 5 said that all 3 taxes should be reduced, so it's a big indicator. As to the analysis by the size of the business, we don't see any significant difference here. We've seen that the medium businesses, they evaluate the number of the businesses in shadow to the lesser extent, and they vote still in the same manner. Is the salary tax, VAT, and then income tax. Then there was a more serious question. We asked what should be the overall tax rate to make sure that the businesses like you refuse the optimization schemes and offer a ladder. For example, if now you pay 50%, if you pay 40, or what happens if you pay 30, or where can we stop? And the majority of the people said that the salary taxes should be reduced first thing, and the majority says that the respective tax should be 25%. For example, if I work with a company and I'm about to be paid 1,000 hryvnia, 200 more hryvnias are about to be paid as taxes from that salary, but not another 1,000. Obviously, there are people who say that we want to pay less, but we see that they come in smaller numbers, so 20-25%, and in medium-sized segment, the most agreed to pay 25%. But talking about the VAT tax, and in the next slide we will see the income tax, everybody unanimously said that this tax should be 10% or lower. This is what they're ready to pay as a VAT tax. Seriously? Yes, honestly, so that we can work, or honestly, we have revolutionary anarchists who say that it should be cancelled, but they are within this statistic error, like 5%. In every drawdown there are 5% of the people who respond in a different way. So about a half, or more than a half, they vote for 10% or lower. So we allow them to dream, and this is what they were dreaming of. And the same story is with the reduction of the income tax. The concentration point is 10%, and the micro businesses say maybe 15%, but it's better even below 10%, so we operate fairly. So that's the taxation scheme offered by the 10-10-10 tax reform for the VAT tax and income tax, and we asked them whether they know about the main components of this reform. Do they support it? And the first question we were asking was not about the reform, but the idea itself, the idea of imposition of the tax over the exported capital. And we asked the owners of the business if they know about this idea, but the results were not quite positive for me. Judging by my bubble, I was thinking that many businesses would say that yes, we know about it, but it turned out that they're like less than third part of all the businesses. Someone may have heard it, but they didn't know the substance of it, and 1 in 5 said that I'm hearing about it for the first time in my life. And we've also asked whether people are ready to switch to this system on tax on withdrawn capital, and there is no such a strict support. Only 1 in 4 businesses say that they would do it. So people have heard something about this idea, but they say it depends. Yeah, but it's because they don't understand. Yeah, it depends on the conditions, on the amount of tax. We can talk about it, but not to support it without any remarks. So let's proceed to the 10-10-10 tax reform, and the findings here are even more modest than in case of tax on withdrawn capital. So only 27% of the micro businesses and 16% all across Ukraine know about it. The micro businesses know less about that. The small sized businesses know better about this. About 40% have heard something, but they're not sure. A little bit bigger is this indicator with the small and medium-sized businesses, and 45% say that they are hearing about this idea for the first time. The idea should be made aware to the most businesses possible. This idea should be promulgated, and among those who've heard about it at least once, we've asked them whether they support this reform, and here we see the high level of support. So people who have at least heard something, they like the idea. 1 in 3 supports it without saying, and more than a half say yes to a certain extent. We have to understand that the businesses are cautious people. They are not inclined to some exalted decision, so it's a big figure. 84% about those who have at least heard something about this reform, they support it. The fraction of non-support is insignificant. It's only 6% in total, a little bit bigger for the medium-sized business. We have to realize what's going on in the medium-sized business, but generally the small and micro businesses support this reform completely. This is where I would like to wrap up my speech, and I would like to give the floor to my colleagues. Maybe they want to comment the results. Ms. Anastasiya, thank you very much for this very profound research. Dear friends, let's reflect on what we've just seen and heard, what Ms. Anastasiya has just said. She said it's judgment for our tax reform. It can be set as fundamental for the roadmap for our work. So, Mr. Marian, what's your opinion? Thank you very much for this study. I want to thank the Institute of the Economic Leadership for ordering this study. The idea of this research was for us to have arguments for the International Monetary Fund and for the Parliament and for internal discussion to discuss the further tax reform. You know that the President, during his latest address to the Parliament, he said that we need tax reform for post-war recovery of Ukraine. On top of that, the latest memorandum with the IMF, it contemplates the same statement that the reform is necessary for the post-war recovery. What's the main idea we work on? The main idea is to implement the system where it's easy to work fairly. asking certain questions, we've realized that there are some probable answers that we can get. They were confirmed, but they were not news to us because we knew the macro figures. So now 60% on the taxes of the salaries are the proceeds from those who are government employees. However, only 15% of the fund is the fund of the government employees' salaries. So it's just a quarter, which tells us that evading of the salary tax, it has a mass nature in all the sectors of economy. It may not be present in some international companies like Coca-Cola or something like that, but generally the economy tries to avoid those taxes. The research showed that 0% of respondents are ready to pay that load, that tax load, 51% over the salary, even within, not even within the statistic error, not even 5%, but 0%. So we should impose such a tax rate that can be paid by anybody, and so that businesses don't avoid paying it. And we were understanding that this VAT rate should not be more than 10-12%. Even if we divide all the VAT tax by the amount of goods turnover, we get 13%. If we divide it by the probable turnover existing, given the shadowing, it will be 8%. So in fact there are rates that the businesses pay one way or another. So nobody in average pays more than 20% for of the salary tax, and the actual VAT rate is lower than 10% here today. So the idea of anti-corruption reform is to recognize the factors that exist. The 80% of the enterprises say that there is the turnover tax, and we should bring our taxation system in a condition we have now to get the details about all the taxpayers. And when we start talking about the real tax hike, we get back to this matter. But for the anti-corruption tax reform that is supposed to be implemented during the post-war recovery, it's aimed at the shadowing on the businesses and providing businesses with the stimuli to contact less with the tax administration, because it's no secret that any tax evasion schemes are impossible without cooperation with the controlling bodies. This is why we call it an anti-corruption tax reform. Ms. Oleh, can we say that the results of the study correlate with the tax reform? I would say that this tax reform was initiated by the Office of the President. He supports it, but it's clear that now we are at some point where the state cannot reduce the taxes because there is a war going on. But we prepare this reform, it will be adopted, and after it is adopted, the taxes will be reduced, as we expect, right upon the end of the warfare operations, right upon our victory. And it will be an important step for the recovery of the country, to make sure that the businesses which are affected now, so that they can quickly start developing. I want to say that the same reform was undertaken by Bulgaria. They have quite good results. Well, more or less the same that is proposed in Ukraine now, and those results allowed them to deshadow a large part of their GDP and to achieve GDP growth and growth of the businesses. So this is why I want to say the same, that the businesses say that it confirms once again that we need this reform. Please, Mr. Anatoliy. Thank you very much. In this case, I would agree with the results of this study, because I was doing the same question in my Telegram channel recently. I also communicate with the Ukrainian banks. I asked them, why don't you extend loans to Ukrainian businesses? You have a lot of money, and the answer is interesting. We studied their financial reports, and more than 90% of the private companies optimize the taxes, and we as a banks, we should understand how they're supposed to repay the loans. So we have a distorted social agreement when businesses act as if they pay the taxes and the government acts like they care about the businesses, and it's not fair. There is a lot of corruption money being made by the fiscal agencies. I'm not a government official. I can call the things what they are, and the government creates obstacles for the businesses. The optimization of taxes, it distorts the picture in the country for the foreign investors to enter our market. We see ratings of tax payments. We are in the end of this rating, and it's a very bad sign in terms of attractiveness for foreign investments, and we understand that we cannot grow without the investments. And the last thing I want to say that I'm a representative of a number of business communities. I'm an advisor of the board of the two big Ukrainian companies, and it's a big issue for us, because if the government officials want to do something bad to the business, they do it through the fiscal agencies. They have a huge lever of influence. Ukrainian legislation is not efficient, it's not fair, it's not transparent, and this is why the anti-corruption tax reform that we discussed for more than a year, it creates very good conditions to make sure that Ukrainian businesses develop, so that we decrease the influence by the tax administration on the quality of the business operation, and it will create very cool conditions for the investments. Because if we don't have investments, no foreign aid will help us rebuild our country. And the tax system is one of the components, of important components for foreign investments. We compete for the foreign capital, and the tax system can make us more competitive and to raise more capital. So I agree with the results of the research. They are very fair and they coincide with our results. I don't agree with the colleagues that we should implement the tax reform after the war. Now that the businesses don't have income, when they cannot pay the taxes, the consequences for the budget will not be very negative. If we implement this reform right now, I understand that it's impossible because we're in the second half of the year. Well, it would already show the growth of investments in Ukraine, the growth of goods turnover, and the shadowing, because optimization of taxes costs, depending on the scheme, like from 5-6% to 12%. Those are the money that the businesses get for the growth. So I want to thank the colleagues for this research, for the advocacy program, and as a representative of the community, of the business community, I support the 10-10-10 model. Thank you, Mr. Anatoliy. So you've asked my second question. So why do we wait the war to end? Our economy, our country needs investments now. We need this movement in that direction now already. So why waiting? Well, first of all, to implement the tax reform, we need to adopt, in my opinion, we have to adopt its effect. The president said he likes this reform, he supports it, but there is a simple fact. First of all, we have to convince our foreign donors. In fact, all the state budget that is channeled at social subsidies is funded by European Union and United States. So without their agreement, because they cover half of the expenses of the country, we cannot do it. We are in negotiations with international donors, including IMF, and we try to show that the formal decrease of the rate doesn't necessarily mean the decrease of the income, because de facto the rates are lower anyway in Ukraine, and we don't find the EU model fit for us. Sometimes there are like 27% rates, but this rate is lower, for example, for food products. De facto in European Union, even according to the specialized reports, the average rate is 31%. It starts with some other categories. So in our case, food and basic needs are 70–80% of the expenses of the people. In my opinion, it wouldn't be correct to walk the European path in this way, so we try to convince our partners, and thanks God there is understanding by the director of the IMF, because Kristalina Georgieva, was one of those who were implementing this 10-10-10 reform in Bulgaria. So they decreased the salary tax from 50 and down to 10%, and income tax from 40% to 10%, and it resulted in expansion of the taxation base thrice. And regardless the fact that Bulgaria was reducing the tax every year gradually, their budget proceeds were growing every year. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Do we have any questions on the floor? Good afternoon, Vladislav Obuch, Current Forum. My first question is regarding the compensators. What do you see them like, at least on the first stage of implementation of the reform? Because even given the situation when you say that in fact the taxes are being paid less, we under-receive some taxes and the taxation base is not being expanded due to a number of reasons. And second question, again getting back to this, should we start printing money, which is logical, but it's the road to nowhere? And another question is, in case of reform implementation, what is the destiny of the pension fund? As it was said, the businesses pay less social contributions, and if we cancel it or bring it down to 10%, maybe there will be no such proceeds from the government sector, which is the basis for replenishment of this fund. Thank you for the question. There should be no compensators for the replenishment, because we're talking about the formal side. We don't have 20% rate of the VAT tax. It only exists if your turnover exceeds 1 million hryvnia, but there are private entrepreneurs who work at 5 or 2% rates, so we have something unclear here. So we set at 10% for everybody. Mathematically, it's bigger than the system that we have now. And again, getting back to the salary tax, 60% of the income from the salary proceeds from the salary tax is the internal turnover. This is something paid by the government employees. So from every hryvnia of tax reduction, we get 60 kopecks back, because we don't process it through the whole system. And again, you see the study here, it clearly demonstrates that at certain tax rates people are ready to pay, and they will not resort to any schemes of optimization that are very numerous, unfortunately, in Ukraine. Mr. Anatoliy, yes, what I wanted to add is that according to the study, more than 40% of Ukrainian private companies pay salaries in the envelope, which means optimization. Optimization costs money, and at the rate of 10%, this study says they will not resort to optimization, and thus the taxation will grow, the tax proceeds will grow after taxation of the salaries. And that's not it. We understand that when a company invests more, when they expand their manufacturing capacities, they add more jobs, we will have the expansion of the taxation base, and it will enable us not to only replenish the budget, but also to increase the proceeds that are expected during that exist in this system, where people evade taxes and try to conceal them. Dear friends, do we have any more questions on the floor? Now that we don't have questions on the floor, I would like to thank you for this conversation. I would like to thank the armed forces for the opportunity to hold the events like this. We continue working for our victory, and glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.